Cantor, I don't know how you do it. You have to be here and there at the same time. I realize we just need 2 of you, maybe 3, I'm not sure. Let's see if you remember from the beginning. Shana,
Shana,
Tova,
Tova,
Umituka,
Mituka,
Yoter. A sweet new year, or a good new year, a sweet new year, and even more sweet new year. So just by show of hands, how many of you grew up with Yiddish? Oh, that is quite a lot. Yeah. I was talking to my mother at our table tonight, and I asked, did my grandparents ever speak Yiddish? No. They were a part of a generation that the parents spoke, but then the kids didn't speak it to the kids, and they certainly didn't speak it to the grandkids. So I'm going to need for my sermon at the I'm going to need Cantor because she has a lot more Yiddish proficiency, as you'll see. Yiddish as a language is chock full of comebacks for almost any situation. Here are a few of my favorites.
So's wachsen wie a Zwiebele, mit Kopf in der Red.
You should grow like an onion with your head in the ground.
So's verlieren alle Zeine, a chutz einem, und soll dir weh tun.
All your teeth should fall out except one, and that one should hurt.
A süßen Teut sollst du haben. A Trag mit Zucker soll dich überflören.
May you have a sweet death. A truck full of sugar should run you over. Or how about,
Werden soll von dir a Blindstick, und die Katz soll dich knappen.
may you turn into a blintz and be snatched by a cat. And this is probably my favorite one. My mother-in-law says this one all the time.
Oy vey, geh kacken auf den Jam.
I don't even need to translate that one. Go poop in the sea, basically. Thank you, Cantor. And you did it beautifully. I never would have gotten that. Thank you. Born in a world of the shtetl, Yiddish is a language for combat. Us Yids may not have had much political power in the world, but we sure knew how to pack a punch. But perhaps the brilliance of the language is how sparing it is. Only a letter or 2 is sufficient to make a point. For example, if I say, oi, what do you say? Hey. Yeah. So when I tell you that I could encapsulate the entirety of this past year with 2 Hebrew or Yiddish letters, you will understand what I mean. The letters are pei and ayin. And you know what that says? Feh. Say it with me. Feh. If you're not familiar, feh is a souped up version of something the more familiar meh, blah. It indicates a complete and utter disdain for whatever it is in front of us, so we can practice. I don't like that, I don't want to say it about the carpet. Todd will not be a meh, fah. Yeah, you got it, okay. So this year, which was 5784, that thankfully we're now in 5785, I give it a 2 thumbs down, tongue out, angry-eyed, fah. Feh, according to humorist Shalom Auslander, who is one of my favorite authors. He is so funny. I would be next to Shira in bed laughing hysterically. There's not too many books that make me do that. He summarizes not only our post-October 7th existence, but all of Jewish history with Feh. Auslander, who used Feh as the title of his new memoir, recounts learning the stories of Torah in his Orthodox yeshiva, growing up in Muncie, and coming to the realization that it was all a miserable story. More than that, his life would have been, I told you he's very funny, immeasurably better if they had just taught him the Three Little Pigs. In his memoir, he recounts his struggles in a dysfunctional family with an abusive father and a remote mother. More than offering him solace from his home life, the stories from our tradition only seem to exasperate his troubles and eventually his triumph. It is only through the intervention of his wife and his family that he's able to find a way to survive. Looking back at his life, Auslander sees only a sea of feh colored by layers of drech. To be fair to Auslander, when it comes to our tradition, there are, in fact, a lot of downers. From getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden, you know that story, to spending 40 years wandering in the wilderness. We are a people who rarely gets what it wants and often gets what it doesn't want. And it's not just our story, Auslander says, that's full of feh, but he says all stories, ancient and modern, especially all religious stories, but just look at the news today, and all you see is feh. If this is true, the question we need to ask ourselves is why? Why all this drech and feh and meh and bleh? Why are we subjecting ourselves to all these terrible stories that are meant to make us feel guilty and bad and awful? According to a study out of Emory University in the early 2000s, researcher Dr. Marshall Duke asked kids a series of questions about what they knew about their family of origin. Did they know, for example, where their grandparents had grown up? What schools had their parents gone to? And on and on. And it turns out the more that they knew about their own family story, the more sense of self that they had, and the more resilient that they were. This was true whether the stories they told were positive or negative. In fact, it was the ones that were full of struggle, full of feh, that actually had the greatest impact on our children. He called these stories oscillating narratives, stories that describe a winding road, just like the Torah. You recognize this, a winding road through the wilderness that's full of setbacks, that's mixed in with a little success along the way. It is these type of stories that actually build our character. What Auslander describes as feh is actually maybe our secret sauce as a people for our resiliency. There is a reason that in our synagogue library down there, which I encourage you, it's a wonderful library, it has an entire bookcase with Holocaust books. And right beside that, American immigrant stories about struggles coming here and feminist survival tales. Over 20,000 books actually currently have been published about the Holocaust, with more coming every day, hundreds of which are written specifically for kids. I find this very interesting. Anytime PJ Library puts out a list, we send books to young people, and they require lots and lots of books for all different ages. And anytime they ask for submissions, they say, please, no Holocaust books. That's how many they get, actually. We do not dwell on stories of suffering because we have a predilection to the macabre. We do so because they provide us the roadmap for surviving even the worst of situations. In the year of Feh, we have heard, in addition to the Feh, countless stories of heroism, and we're going to start building. There's actually more and more coming up, but here are a few just from October 7th. The story of a 47-year-old Bedouin mini bus driver. This was incredible. His name was Yosef Ziadana. He barreled into the Nova Music Festival. He was called in to pick up one of the participants there. And he went and he saved as many concert goers, this Bedouin, as he could. and he saved over 30 concert goers from the trauma down there. How about the story of Noam Tebow? Maybe you've heard of this one. He was a 62-year-old retired major general whose son, Amir, who was a journalist in Haaretz, was in his home in Nahal Oz, one of the kibbutzes that were attacked. He raced from his home in Tel Aviv, and you can imagine the confusion on October 7th, lots of roadblocks. He didn't care. He was going to do anything to get to his son. He barreled through all of the roadblocks, took up a gun, killed terrorists, and made it all the way to the door where his son was in, behind the safe room. And he's talking to his son. He saved his son, his daughter-in-law, and their 2 kids, and brought them to safety. That is determination, right? Or how about, I love this story, Rachel Idri. This is awesome. The terrorists came to her home, and they were, they looked a little like they could use a bite to eat. So she got some Moroccan cookies and tea and stalled until the army came and they killed the terrorists. But, they were just the ingenuity that she shared there. These are just a few, the top of the tip of the iceberg of thousands upon thousands of oscillating narratives that describe real-life people trying to survive the worst of situations. Actually, on Yom Kippur, we're going to hear from 2 survivors during our reflection series. For us here in Buffalo, I was amazed this year. We got letter upon letter upon letter. We displayed them on the door of the sanctuary. Nancy McGorry put them up for us from different churches and other religious organizations that were there for us in this time. We got calls. We had so many people from many different communities come to our building to make sure that we were cared for. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who, walking down the street, people, if you're wearing a Jewish star or other items, they say, "I'm so sorry." Right? Anyone have that experience this year? Yeah. For every tragedy, there was an equal, if not greater, act of heroism. For every angry interaction, hateful social media posting, loud protest gathering, there was outstretched arms and open hearts in equal measure. Yes, this has been a year of oi, but it's also filled with joy. Right? People within our community who graduated, who got married, had babies, grandbabies, great-grandbabies. I'm looking at Elaine in the back. Or just generally had something spectacular, recovery happen to them. A year is never just one thing, but it's colored by many things, good and bad. Judaism may be filled with lots of curses, but it's filled with blessings as well. Here's just a few wonderful quotes from different Jews over the years. We have to turn first to Anne Frank, who said, "Think of all the beauty still left around you and be happy." If she could say that in the middle of the Holocaust, it's amazing. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who we often go to for inspiration. Jews survived all the defeats, expulsions, persecutions, and pogroms, the centuries in which they were regarded as a pariah people, even the Holocaust itself, because they never gave up their faith, that one day they would be free to live as Jews without fear. And lastly, from my friend, Rabbi Sharon Brous, who I went to Israel with years ago, and a lot of you know the Amen effect. She said, "The idea that it's possible to move from slavery to freedom, from darkness to light, from despair to hope, that's the greatest Jewish story ever told." Tonight, we begin 5785, and we fell for all the heroic that happened in between the tragic. We shep nachis, we plotz with pride, feeling verklempt. Yes, this has been a year of feh, but in all the sadness and pain, surely we can find hope. In all the loss, we can find remembrance. The stories of 5784 will join the stories of countless other tragic years to be told in the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation after that. L'dor, vador, vador. Fe, la fe, la fe, la fe. Right. And I also brought this with me. I always go to Vidler's. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Find a little button for this year. This is the optimistic button.
You rock!
To a sweet and joyful year ahead. A Shana Tova Umituka Yoter. Amen.